Hi there, everyone, and welcome to UpNorthLive Unscripted on this Thursday evening. I am Maya Engel, and I said this earlier in our 5 o'clock show, but I feel like I'm a broken record because I think I've started the show every day by saying it's another nice, hot, sunny, dry day out there in northern Michigan, which is true again today. But, Joe, I think tomorrow I might be saying something a little different, right?
Yeah, well, finally, we have a little rain in the forecast coming in here. I'm actually looking at radar. This has nothing to do with our area, but up around Duluth, there's a couple tornado warnings right now, way up on the west end of Lake Superior. So some active weather there. We don't have to worry about that, but we will see some rain coming in later tonight, Maya, it looks like, and then through tomorrow. So that'll be good. You know, the grass is getting a little crunchy in some spots if you don't have irrigation.
Yep. Definitely need some rain.
Yeah. We'll look at that. Of course, the weekend's coming up too. We'll have a peek at what to expect for that and into next week a little later in the show.
Thanks, Joe. And let's start off with one of our stories we have been working on today. Our anchor and reporter, Mark Schlett, has been working on this. And if you live around northern Michigan or really just our entire state in general, chances are you have potentially hit a deer before while you are driving. It can be very hard to avoid those critters, especially if you're driving out at night. In fact, on average, about 55,000 Michigan drivers will have the unfortunate collision with a deer this year, because on average, that's how many people collide with deers in a year. So that has an impact on not only our wildlife, but of course, on us and the cars that we drive. And so MDOT and the DNR, they've teamed up to try to take a big step forward in identifying the most common places where we see these wildlife crossing hotspots and addressing what happens at them. So Mark Schlett has more on this story.
We can fix them. Yeah, we've done Teslas and we've done tons of Subarus and everything in between.
At Tate's Auto Body in Traverse City, if your car can be fixed, they can do it. But sometimes when that deer on the road really does a number on your ride,
they can total them out. Yeah. Well, we've had cars that were only 3-4 years old that ended up being total losses because of the amount of damage.
And while usually car deer season is just starting, this year it's already proven to be a busy one here at the shop.
Probably a couple of hundred deer crashes through the spring and summer.
MDOT says that Michigan typically ranks 4th in the nation in the number of car deer crashes, 55,000 a year, doing about $130 million in damages. They'd like to see all those numbers go down. So they've teamed up with the DNR and applied for almost $500,000 in grant money from the U.S. Department of Transportation to identify wildlife crossing hotspots on our roads.
Well, the hotspots are the first step in the process towards long-term mitigation for wildlife vehicle collisions. And so the idea is we figure out where these hotspots are the highest priority locations now, and then in the future, that'll help us with project planning to reduce overall wildlife collisions.
While deer are the most common collisions we have, MDOT says they're focusing on a wide variety of species for a wide variety of reasons.
Of course, white-tailed deer that you mentioned, elk, moose, black bear, and wild turkeys, all of those that impact our motorists. And then a second focus is on the smaller species that are kind of more of an at-risk species. So for those species, we selected the pine marten, the Blanding's turtle, and the eastern Massasauga rattlesnake.
The goal is to use the federal money to pour through data, older studies, and the latest numbers, all to better understand where animal crossings lead to collisions. Once they understand that, they can then take the next steps to try and cool those hotspots, lowering the risk for drivers and animals that are at risk.
Especially when we talk about the elk population, that's already a pretty small population. And so when you start looking at how many crashes happen with them each year, that's pretty detrimental to their numbers.
Mark Schlett reporting.
And Mark is here to talk a little bit more about this story. Hi, Mark.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
It's a beautiful, sunny, warm day in northern Michigan. We're gonna have to learn a different phrase by tomorrow, right?
Right, I know. Like I said, it's been a broken record all week now, but tomorrow's gonna be a little different. So good that you're taking advantage of this weather right now, though.
Yeah, just standing out by this busy road, I understand how traffic works. I know to look left and right and left again and do that. But for wildlife to try to cross roads like this in northern Michigan, you know, we've all either had close calls or actually had a wildlife car interaction before, and they're awful. They're awful for the animals. They're awful for the people in the cars. And so MDOT and the DNR was like, hey, let's see if we can't do something to actually address this. And so they've teamed up to apply for this grant to get animals from here to over to there in good place and keep the cars going without the cars also having an interaction with those animals.
So once or if they get this grant money and they can collect this data to see where these hotspots are, what are they going to do from there to help animals get from one side to the other?
That's the important part. This money would be, and that's important to note, that this money, if they get this grant, is really to identify the hotspots and get to better understand why are there so many collisions, interactions, or dead animals in these locations. Once they get that, they can really earmark, okay, this stretch of road in this county is an issue, this stretch of road, this stretch. Once they identify those, which is what this grant money would be used for, they then would take the next step. And that's where you start planning things like these giant oversized culverts that actually go under the highway. And the animals will go find those out and cross under the road. So they're not even on the road. So things like an interstate highway, like a culvert, like that normally would let like a river go through or a stream. Well, they build those under the highway and the animals go through it. And maybe you've seen these. I'm going to back away from this road because it's getting real loud. You've seen these overpasses. They're in Canada. There are some, I believe, out in Montana where it's like an overpass where like a road would go over the highway. But instead of a road being on top, it's actually grass. Okay, so the animals go to the overpass over the highway and they can just walk right across. But it's up above the roadway, obviously. So there are projects like that where if they identify these hot spots and say like, look, this stretch of road is bad, what can we do there? Well, we could do something like a culvert, or we could do something like this. Or maybe it's just warning signs. Or maybe it's changing what's alongside the road to kind of deter animals from crossing at that point. That's phase 2. So that comes after they do this grant. There are states, and my math's not going to be right on this, but over $100 million was awarded in the last grant cycle for, I think, somewhere between 12 and 20 states to tackle their projects. So Michigan is stepping up and being like, hey, can we get some of this money to do this? And so some of those states are further along in the process, and they've done these things where they've identified their hotspots, and then they go into the planning, because let's face it, this is taxpayer money. And if you're going to do something like this, you want to know, A, you're doing it in the right spot, and B, that it's working. So the nice thing, if Michigan gets this money, they can go to these other states and say, hey, this is what we did, and it is working. Or this is what we did, and we didn't have the results that we hoped to get.
So when will MDOT and the DNR know if they did receive this grant money?
Normally, I think it's months. It's not years. It's months that they're going to go through, and they will award the successful applicants. Now, as with so many of these grants, it's not uncommon for it not to be successful the first year. And a lot of grants are that way, where you then tweak your grant, you modify it and everything, and you resubmit it. But they should know within a couple of months whether they got this money and whether this is something they can launch now.
Anything else that you want people to know about this plan?
I think one of the interesting things that kind of caught my attention was they are looking, of course, at deer, because we have a lot of deer car collisions. They're looking at moose in the Upper Peninsula, bear, things like that, turkeys, things like that. So there are these large animals that can cause a lot of damage to a vehicle if you happen to hit it with your car. But they're also looking at other things like turtles. We have some protected turtles here in the state. The rattlesnake that we have here in Michigan. They're taking a look at the species that are at risk, or very small populations that can't afford to be hit by cars, because we don't have that many of them here in the state. So they're really looking at a broad spectrum, not just the damage to cars, but also the damage to the ecosystem if we don't address this issue. I thought that was really interesting.
So Mark, before I let you go, I'm going to pull up our question of the day, and I'm curious what your answer is. So how many times have you hit a deer with your car?
I think I only have one, and it wasn't bad. Where I was the driver, I think I've only had one. I've had a lot of close calls. You have a lot of those, oh, there's a deer right by the side of the road. And I drive a lot through the woods in the Upper Peninsula in the middle of the night to get to and from camp and stuff like that. So it happens all the time. But I think I've only hit one, and it's an awful experience. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It's heartbreaking. It's expensive. You're without a car. So there's all kinds of things. So I think if we can prevent that and slow that down, that would be good. How about you, Maya?
I have also only hit it once, and it wasn't really like I hit the deer. The deer kind of hit me. Like I was driving, and then it came and hit the back of my car as I was already getting past it.
Wow.
So I didn't have too much damage. I was okay. My dog was in the car with me. He was fine. I thought about getting out to check on the deer, but then it just makes me sad to think like, well, what if I did really hurt it? And I didn't want to see that. So yeah, just a bad experience all around.
If we can prevent it, there's a lot of wins for preventing all around. For everybody involved, it's a win if we don't have these collisions.
Yes, that sounds like a great idea, and I'm excited to see where this plan goes moving forward. So Mark, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
No problem. Have a good night.
You too. And I will keep our question of the day up for a little bit longer. So again, that is, how many times have you hit a deer with your car? As of right now, 29% of people say 0. I'm so jealous of all of you because, like Mark and I were just saying, it's a horrible experience. 40% say 1 to 2, 17% say 3 to 4, and 14% say 5 or more. If you haven't voted yet, you can scan the QR code on your screen. I will show this graphic again a little bit later, but we have one more story that we want to share with you, and that is about the Northern Lights. And it seems like we've been seeing the Northern Lights a lot this summer in northern Michigan, and our meteorologist Trevor Robideau, he spoke with an expert to find out why we have been seeing more geomagnetic storms this year.
It's a beautiful natural event that makes us turn to the sky in awe. Some may even call it the holy grail of skywatching, a truly fantastic spectacle that stems from the activity of the sun.
There's a phenomena on the sun called a coronal mass ejection, and that's a really long term that we abbreviate to CME. And what that is a giant blob of the sun's atmosphere that gets expelled from the sun, and sometimes those come towards Earth.
They create an interaction with the Earth's magnetic field, causing a geomagnetic storm. This energy gets deflected to the poles and gives us the beautiful dancing lights. The intensity of any one storm can be hard to predict, but numerical modeling and expert experience is fairly accurate.
It's based on the orientation of the magnetic field. We don't really know how that field is oriented until it gets to a satellite that's about 1 million miles from Earth. And you can think of it as a buoy out in the ocean or out in the lake. But that's when we get our first glimpse of the magnetic field. So our initial estimates really just lean on a lot of experience and some instinct, I guess.
We've had a lot more activity this year than normal due to the sun's natural solar cycle.
So the sun goes through a roughly 11-year cycle, and we're pretty much, we think, at the top of that cycle right now. And as you ramp up over those, over that period to the peak, the frequency and intensity of the events increases. And so that's where we're sitting right now.
This is great for us because it means we get to see more northern lights than normal. But it's not so great for farmers who have new age equipment. Some farmers that use precise GPS tracking on their tractors or other equipment can experience difficulty working their gear after a geomagnetic storm.
When the ionosphere is all frothed up, though, there are these gaps where there's very few electrons and other places where there's more, and that can refract the signal, so you get these reflections and things that are not normal, and that throws off the precision, and that's why you start getting errors. And in the worst cases, like we had in May, the tractors, the guidance systems become unusable.
In northern Michigan, Trevor Robideau, UpNorthLive News.
And we'll check back in with Joe for more on your forecast right after this quick commercial break. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to check back in with Joe, who mentioned that this dry spell that we've been experiencing will soon be over. When can we see some rain, Joe?
What's that?
When will we start seeing some rain?
Later tonight for some spots, Maya, but I think tomorrow, it'll be passing through. We're not going to get like a month's worth of rain tomorrow, though, but we'll take, what we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, I can't remember, do you have flowers like on your patio? I think
I do, but they died a long time ago.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm more of a plant person, and with plants, you don't have to water them as much as flowers. So I failed my flowers this year, but that's okay.
Well, we'll try again next year.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's take a look. It was a beautiful day today. We took our UpNorthLive Skyview drone out to Antrim County, Bel Air. You can see the little stream flowing into the lake there. By the way, I was looking here, not a lot of color yet. Here's another view. Close there to Bel Air. What a nice day. Not much fall color, but you can tell we need rain. The grass is pretty dry, pretty brown, pretty brittle, but a nice view there, kind of soaring over some of the marshland there near Bel Air earlier today. Three big things in the weather after a long time. We just talked about this. Some rain is in the forecast. We'll get into that here in a moment. Saturday looks nice. I know many of you probably looking forward to the weekend. I do think there'll be some morning fog, but then sunny and warm in the afternoon. And it'll be somewhat cooler next week. I think as we get into next week, I think we're kind of done with the 80s that we've had recently. It was another very warm day, though, today. These are the high temperatures. The hot spot, Traverse City, again, 87 at the airport there. Not far behind was Boyne Falls in Charlevoix County, 86. Even Pellston today getting up to 83. Newberry, 81 there in Luce County. We do have a front approaching, so you see this area of low pressure up there near Winnipeg. That's moving away. This frontal boundary will kind of slowly head toward northern Michigan as we go through the evening, through the day tomorrow. There already are showers and storms out ahead of this tonight. We have a couple watch boxes. The red one up there is right up here. That's a tornado watch. And then these are severe thunderstorm watches, or a severe thunderstorm watch there in yellow. I'm actually going to take, just to show you real quick, I'm going to take the watches and warnings off, and or the cloud cover off. And right here where you see this yellow and orange here near Duluth, that's where we do have a tornado warning with that storm right there. By the way, the guy that issued that, he's my former intern. He works up at the Weather Service in Duluth, Woody, by small coincidence. Here's our forecast for our rain. We're not expecting severe weather, but as we head toward morning, here comes this line of showers, and then some scattered showers and storms as we get into the afternoon tomorrow. So that's our chance for rain right there. And then Saturday, things will dry out. If you're wondering how much rain, it's not going to be an extraordinary amount, but a tenth to a quarter inch, maybe a little bit more if you get caught under a thunderstorm. We do not anticipate severe weather, just a general risk for thunderstorms tomorrow. And there's your extended forecast. You can see the cool down into early next week. As we move ahead here, temperatures will drop back into the upper 60s to around 70. And unlike last week, there are some chances for a little bit of rain, especially there, Maya, on Tuesday.
Much needed rain. Thanks so much, Joe. We are going to take a quick break, but Harrison Beebe will join us right after the break for your sports update. Stay with us. Well, it is an exciting day to be a Tigers fan. The Tigers are now tied for the final AL wildcard spot after a Minnesota Twins loss today. But Harrison, you said earlier that right now the Twins still have the tiebreaker. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
They do. So way back 10 years ago when the Tigers were last in the playoffs, there were only 2 wild cards per league. And so what they used to do, they had a little extra time. If 2 teams were tied at the end of 162 games, they'd play a 163. Back in 2009, I remember the Tigers and Twins played one of those. It was the last game at the Metrodome. Tigers lost that one. Minnesota made the playoffs. Now with the 3 wild cards per league, they don't really have the time to do that. So they make a tiebreaker. So yes, we are tied with the Twins right now, but based on regular season record, which Minnesota leads by a game, 7-6, they would have the lead, or they would have the spot based on the 2 teams in the tiebreaker. But 9 games to go. I tell you what, there's one team that's looking really good right now, and there's another team that's not really looking that good right now. And I'd want to be the team supporting, or the guy supporting the Tigers in this next 3 series to wrap up the regular season. That's for sure.
And there's some action from another Detroit team in Traverse City today.
Red Wings back for training camp. Day 1 at center ice, and they kicked it off with a pretty big announcement, really. They revealed after earlier this week re-signing Johnson Bergeron and Lucas Raymond to contract extensions. They announced they brought back Mo Sider, their key defenseman, for the future on a 7-year extension as well. So a lot of the young stars that the Red Wings have really seen a lot of promise from the last few years that have helped make this push to get them near the postseason. They're now back on the books for a long run. So Steve Yzerman clearly likes the guys that he has lined up right now. And hopefully a few of these other additions that he made in the offseason can really be the key to the Red Wings threatening for a playoff once again, just like the Tigers are doing right now.
Exciting time for these Detroit teams and their fans. Harrison, thanks so much for joining us. We do have to take another quick break, but we'll be back in just a few minutes. Our question of the day today was, how many times have you hit a deer with your car? We have about 184 comments on our Facebook page. We also have some comments on this live stream. I just want to share one that Daryl said, gave me a little chuckle. It says, usually just once. Are we supposed to hit it multiple times? So on that note, I think that'll do it for Up North Live Unscripted on this Thursday evening. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you back here tonight on Up North Live News at 11. Take care.